That's out of my hands. It's impossible for the head coach that's been here, for 4 years and 35 years of doing this to think anything else but this is my responsibility and we've got to get it turned around. And that's not my decision in terms of whether I'm here or not, but that's what I will do as a head coach that's been doing it for over 3 decades. When things are not going well from a football standpoint, the head football coach has to be agile enough and able to make those changes.
This is Brian Kelly after LSU's loss to Texas A&M on Saturday. I've been asked a bunch, hey, if there was no buyout, would you want to fire Brian Kelly? And it's a very fair question. And I don't know that I have a great answer to that because part of me looks at programs like let me give you Florida for instance. Florida is a program. The two in the SEC that are probably the most glaring examples of this are Florida and Auburn. Programs that just churn through coaches. And as a result, they struggle to find stability. So I'm not saying there's a good, bad, right, wrong. I think there are different ways to go about this process. And I look at Florida and I say, okay, well, you had Dan Mullen, who won for you, but maybe just didn't win enough, and so you fire him. Or go back to Jim McElwain. Jim McElwain won the East his first 2 years at Florida. Midway through year 3, they fired him because people just didn't like it. He was winning, but they didn't like it. You bring in Dan Mullen, and it was similar. Mullen won, he just didn't win enough. And then you make another change, and you bring in Billy Napier. And now in year 4, you fired Billy Napier. Like, you just keep churning through coaches. It's hard to ever establish stability or culture, any of those types of things. So that's why I tend to believe, give people the resources they need to have success, build a foundation, and build upon it. Expecting a run like Nick Saban had at Alabama is unrealistic. What LSU has done over the last 25 years, however, is be, by and large, an 8-9 win football team that occasionally will pop a big one. You win a title in 2003. You win a title in 2007 despite losing 2 games. You were back in the title game in 2011. You had a really good roster in 2016, but it fell apart unless he got fired. You win a title in 2019. You had the great offense in 2023, but we know what happened defensively. You see my point? LSU, by and large, is a team that wins 8 or 9 games a year, and about every half decade pops a big one. And that's okay, because being a team that goes 10-2, 11-1 every year, unless you're Nick Saban in Alabama, is not realistic. So I'm more inclined to say, give me stability. So, am I okay with firing Brian Kelly? Not really. $54 million to buy out a coach in year 4. And again, it may be proven that this is the best decision. Maybe they nail the next hire and the next guy's awesome and all that. But this reeks of a very impulsive decision that is going to be so consequential. And I want to be very clear as we start talking about the buyout, which is reportedly in the $53-54 million range. And I'm going to go through this and why it's important. But the first thing I think that is so important for people to know, the state of Louisiana is not paying Brian Kelly's buyout. So a lot of people want to talk. I know this happens all the time. People talk about optics and with the government shut down. None of that has anything to do with Brian Kelly's buyout. Brian Kelly, his salary paid by the LSU athletic department is $400,000 a year. That's his salary. The other 9.1 mil, whatever it is, that's paid through TAF, okay? Through donor dollars. So please understand this. Do not tell me the state doesn't have roads and we can't pay teachers and you're going to pay a coach $50 million to not work. No. the very rich, generous people who give money to LSU are taking money out of their bank accounts and giving it to LSU to give Brian Kelly to go away. If you have a problem with that, go yell at the very rich, generous people who are donating money to LSU. But as I tell you all the time, I don't want someone telling me how to spend my money, so I'm not going to tell other people how to spend theirs. If people have millions of dollars they want to commit to paying a man to not work, God bless you, you do you. But please do not come at me today with any notion of, well, the optics are bad because the state is not paying Brian Kelly $1. They're not. The state of Louisiana is not paying Brian Kelly not to work, okay? I'll tell you sort of how this is structured. So Brian Kelly's contract, which I did look at a week ago, he is paid approximately $800,000 per month, right? So he had the 10-year, $95 million deal. It's equal installments. So if you just look at roughly 10 years, 12 months a year, 120 months, you take $95 million divided by 120 months. That gives you the monthly installment that Brian Kelly would be paid over the life of the contract through December of 2031. Okay, so he's got 6 more years on the deal. The buyout does not have a lump sum. That's a good thing. For example, Mark Stoops at Kentucky, this is a big sticking point there. His buyout after the season is $40 million, but it is all due in full, paid in full, within 60 days of his termination. So if Kentucky wants to fire Mark Stoops, they got to come up with $40 million, boom, to make him go away within 60 days. That's much more challenging than saying, you know what, we're already paying Brian Kelly $800K a month. We're going to keep paying him $800K a month for the next 6 years, which is effectively where LSU is. Also, there is mitigation in his contract. What that means is if he gets another job, his buyout is offset by that number. So I don't know if Brian Kelly is going to coach again. I got an email in my inbox today, which were the betting odds for Brian Kelly's next coaching job. For example, I'll look at this right now. It's his next coaching job. Arkansas is 3-1. How about that? Arkansas, UCLA, Virginia Tech, Stanford, Oklahoma State, UNLV. I don't know if he'll coach again. I don't know. I don't know that Brian Kelly loves this era of college football, and he may go the Nick Saban route and go do TV. But the mitigation does extend to a media deal, meaning if Brian Kelly gets a TV contract, a job doing TV or media, whatever he's paid to do that job, his buyout is lessened by that amount. So there's some mitigation in there, which is a good thing. There has been also this conversation about a settlement. Would Brian Kelly accept a lesser amount for his contract? And that was presented, as I'm told, to Brian Kelly and his agent on Sunday. A lump sum settlement of his deal. Would you take a lump sum now, a lesser amount lump sum? And he declined. So faced with a $54 million buyout, the governor, the board of supervisors, and a group of very influential boosters met at 5 o'clock on Sunday at the governor's mansion to discuss this, the buyout. Did Scott Woodward have the authority to fire Brian Kelly, to pay him this, to agree to this buyout, all that sort of stuff, and what they would do with the buyout? And what they agreed to is effectively, we're not going to do anything. Just keep paying Brian Kelly the $800K per month per his contract right now, and they can discuss and negotiate whatever that buyout settlement terms may look like at a future date. But they're moving forward as a program. They'll keep paying Brian Kelly, but they have not agreed to a settlement. I know there was a report on Monday that they had agreed to a settlement of a lesser sum. I can tell you that is not true. There, as of right now, Monday, there has not been an agreement between Brian Kelly and LSU on a settlement. That has not happened. So, and Ross Dellinger reported that may be weeks, months, and it may be weeks or months. They'll cross that bridge at a future time, and I think a lot of that will have the governor's involvement as a new university president is going to be hired and new board members as seats turn over, and there will be a trickle-down effect through all of that as it's involved. But I think there's another key part of this, and I want to discuss it. I need to break, so I stay on time. So let me knock out a break. I want to come back. I want to discuss what I think is the other key part of most of you and I. We don't. Brian Kelly's money is his money, and rich people are going to pay that buyout. It doesn't affect you and me. But to what degree it affects the LSU program is what I want to discuss. I mentioned that with respect to Brian Kelly's buyout, I think there is a very important thing to keep in mind. That you and I, who aren't going to write checks to help pay Brian Kelly's buyout, but who care very much about LSU, the university, the football program, athletics, all of it, will be interested in. Make no mistake, the college football world and agents who represent coaches are watching how are watching how LSU handles the Brian Kelly buyout situation. The number of phone calls in the last 24 hours, coaches, agents, boosters, admins, like everyone in the country wants to know what's happening here. Like, we all think of LSU as a very prominent job. We're all very proud of LSU, and we think of it in those terms, but it's true. Like, it's not just our opinion because we live here, love the school, went there, whatever the case may be. LSU is a top 10, maybe top 5 job in the country. It gets in that conversation. And so people are going to be interested to see how LSU handles this because we're at a very pivotal point in college football. In this era, this NIL, rev share, transfer portal era, everyone has seen their expenses go up because of the money you have to spend on your roster. So everyone is looking right now at all these coaches' contracts and the buyouts. And this year is going to be an extreme example. Like Jimbo's $76 million buyout at Texas A&M forever has been that scarlet letter. But now you have Penn State paying nearly $50 million to buy out James Franklin. You have Florida with Billy Napier. Now you have LSU paying north of $50 for Brian Kelly. And it's a cautionary tale for how these contracts are done. But the other part of this that's important is if you sign a coach to a deal like this, $100 million with the guaranteed money, with the buyout, 95% of it guaranteed. And on the back end, it goes awry, and then you try to finagle your way out of paying that buyout. That could be a very poor reflection on your athletic department. So I understand that there's a meeting on Sunday night at the governor's mansion with the governor and the board and boosters, all trying to discuss ways potentially around or how to manage this very significant buyout that Brian Kelly has. Do you fundraise the 54? Do you continue to pay $800K a month for the duration of it? Do you negotiate a lesser settlement amount? Some of you have asked, and I don't mind saying that there have been whispers of maybe attempting to exercise the for-cause component of Brian Kelly's contract, which would nullify the buyout. I don't believe that would happen, but maybe that could be used as leverage to get him to negotiate a lesser number. But all of that said, that might save you money on this deal. But what message is that sending to the college football, to the next coach? Because I'm going to tell you straight up, if you think you're going to go hire Lane Kiffin, if you think you're going to go hire Dan Lanning and get those guys to leave their very, very stable, solid situations to come take your job, and if you think you're going to get them to take that job for anything less than a $100 million contract with all the same guarantees you gave Brian Kelly, you're high. Why would Lane Kiffin leave his job where he's got a roster that's probably going to I'd be stunned if they didn't make the playoff this year. Why would he take your job without guarantees? Why would Dan Lanning leave Oregon without the same guarantees you just gave Brian Kelly? And if what you show to the college football world and the agents that represent these coaches is, oh, we'll sign you to the deal, but on the back end, we're not going to negotiate in good faith. We're going to try to weasel our way out of paying the buyout if it goes sideways. That's why I think it is so important to be fair and ethical in business and in these conversations. The bottom line is, regardless of what happened with Brian Kelly at the end, it went badly. I get it. You gave him that contract. You went to Brian Kelly, who could have stayed at Notre Dame for the remainder of his career. Could have. But the way you got him to leave South Bend was by guaranteeing him $100 million. $95 million. 10 years, $95 million. 9.5 per year. That's how you got him to leave South Bend. You made him an offer he couldn't refuse. So, honor that agreement. You were the one who made the decision to fire him. He didn't walk away. You fired him. He's lost 3 games, lost 3 of the last 4. The last one was embarrassing. You could say lost the locker room, all that stuff, and I'm not disagreeing with any of that. Saturday night was hideous. Hideous. But you gave the man a contract. Honor the contract you gave him. That would be my opinion, my advice. As much as that's going to hurt financially, it could potentially hurt even more when you go to make future hires if you get the reputation of not negotiating in good faith and not willing to honor the contract that you offered this coach, that you signed with this coach 4 years ago because it didn't work out. Well, that's your fault. You're the one who gave him the $95 million contract with 90% of it guaranteed. Own it. You have to do right by Brian Kelly. You gave him the contract, and unless you want this to affect your ability to sign future marquee coaches, you have to honor this deal. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.